As we'll now hear from Pablo Torre, as he did a 7th-month investigation, getting the paperwork because Aspiration had went through a bankruptcy. So this is how all these things became available to the public. And Pablo even went as far as to getting some former employees to speak. This situation is getting real sticky. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
US or in the world?
In the world. What this episode needs is to begin with a couple of libs. What neither of you is, though, are the libs in question. Because these two libs I'm talking about are two actual, very prominent members of the Democratic Party named Andrei Cherny and Joe Sandberg. These are two Harvard graduates.
Harvard. Crappy school.
Who successfully raised hundreds of millions of dollars with the help of some of the most famous people in the entire world. Because Andrei and Joe co-founded a company that they named Aspiration. Andrei Cherny and Joe Sandberg, basically assembled the celebrity Avengers of climate change to endorse Aspiration. Leonardo DiCaprio became an investor and advisory board member. You may have heard of his work.
I have.
Drake invested and gave a statement to the likes of Rolling Stone saying, quote, Aspiration's approach to climate change is really inspiring. Orlando Bloom, Cindy Crawford.
It's a good one.
They found her.
Cindy Crawford's even more famous daughter.
Yeah, that's wild. I was just
Kaya
about to read that.
Gerber.
Yeah.
In there, even the former coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, Doc Rivers,
Well, you know.
invested. Aspiration wound up raising a total of $865 million.
No way.
It was valuated as, quote, a green bank at $2.3 billion in 2021 with the goal of going public.
Okay, I'm going to raise my hand. I know you're building very meticulously, but I'm going to jump the line and ask the question. What the hell do they actually do? Like, that's cool. I want to save the world. What do they actually do? What are these people investing in?
I mean,
Hey,
it's
print stuff.
It's such a good question, a question that they started to answer on various billboards all across America, because their slogan, if you ever saw one of these, was this: clean rich is the new filthy rich.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh at our environment, but I can't tell if this is a joke or not.
Oh, the concept of investing with a conscience, David. This was super popular in 2020, 2021, as you may recall. The climate change movement, Donald Trump's first administration, it ending.
Mm-hmm.
These companies started embracing the environment, and companies wanted to be known as the good guys. This is a company of good guys. And Amin asked the relevant question, so what do the good guys here purport to do? Well, their business was kind of simple. For example, let's say, purely hypothetically, that you had 3,487 pages of documents.
Give or take.
And that added up to a single tree. Aspiration, what they did was offer to balance that out by arranging the planting of one tree in your name, replacing the tree that you killed. And here, Amin,
So old.
here, Amin, is what Aspiration's co-founders, noted Harvard graduates, Andrei Cherny and Joe Sandberg, understood. That trees, it turns out, are made of what element?
Carbon?
Carbon. What that means is you could plant trees to zero out not just 3,487 pages of documents, but pretty much any kind of carbon emission you wanted to offset. And turns out, lots of shit emits carbon. Drake's private jet activity. Plant some trees. Major League Baseball stadium operations. Quote, for the first time in its history, the Red Sox have affixed a sponsor name on the grass at Fenway Park. Through a partnership with Aspiration, their name will now be featured near the fungo circles on the grass between the warning track and the infield, end quote.
I have a tear in my eye because it's such horse hockey. We were a LEED certified ballpark, and all it means is you have to do things way more expensively.
Gold, silver?
We were the first ever retractable roof gold facility.
Wow.
It was really impressive. We got to do a press
I
conference.
did not know this.
That's pretty good.
We got to do everything.
For a stadium to be LEED gold, that's
It was just a budget item. We just had to pay instruction, basically. You have to do it in a way that gets you the certification. You're with them at all times while you're killing trees and while you're emitting.
So you're just paying? That's all it takes?
That's all it is.
I thought it was you were gonna tell me, oh yeah, like the roof is made out of a special material that actually
Don't be
generates.
ridiculous.
But I should clarify that things have gotten a lot more elaborate since then, because what Aspiration kind of figured out was they don't even need to do the planting of the trees themselves.
Outsource it?
What they did, to use a proper term, they brokered these sales of carbon credits. They were a brokerage for trees, which they also did, by the way, for Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, which also bought millions of carbon credits, meaning paid for the brokering of the planting of all of these trees. And brokering, you may ask yourself, what kind of a margin is there?
Yeah, that's where I was headed with this.
On the brokering business, typically, it costs about 10 to 20 cents to plant a tree, I'm told. Aspiration was charging the Red Sox and Meta and Drake $1.
Whew, that's nice. That's nice work if you can
Little
get it.
5X.
Yeah.
5 to 10x, depending.
You had me at hello.
But as for how Andre and Joe got the Red Sox and Meta and Iron Man and Drake and Leonardo DiCaprio, and also, this is not a joke, Bill and Hillary and the Clinton Foundation to care about meeting not some gold lead certified blah, 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 but what they trademarked as the Aspiration Standard, TM. This is where I should note that Andre Czerny and Joe Sandberg were more than just members of the Democratic Party. Andre and Joe aspired to be major leaders of the Democratic Party. You live in Phoenix.
I do.
You may vaguely recall Andre Czerny as the former chair of the Arizona Democratic Party. Also,
What a time.
the youngest White House speechwriter in United States history, whose former boss personally endorsed him in a run for United States Congress.
Hello, this is President Bill Clinton. I'm calling to ask you to join me in supporting Andre Czerny for Congress. I've known Andre since he worked for me in the White House to improve education and to create new jobs. He's innovative, he's creative, so I trust him to get our economy going, and you should too.
I should note that Andre lost that congressional race in 2012. He then co-founded Aspiration the year after in 2013 with his friend, Joe Sandberg. The two of them had met at a Harvard networking event in DC.
Of course.
Way back in 97, and I know this, unfortunately, because I read a whole story about this on the Harvard alumni website. But as of 2019, Joe Sandberg had gotten rich. He'd done private equity at Blackstone, was a founding investor in Blue Apron, the meal delivery company. He was even the subject of a splashy headline in the LA Times. Quote, "He made millions as an LA investor. Now he may run for president to fight poverty." As of March 2025, okay, now it's this year, just 6 months ago, there was another headline. This one happened to be from the Department of Justice. And it was written by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. Quote, "Joseph Sandberg, co-founder of Aspiration Partners, arrested for conspiring to defraud an investment fund of at least $145 million.
Oh, God.
That isn't even what Pablo Torre finds out is here to investigate. Because what really happened that brought us to this table is that weeks after Joe Sandberg got arrested, Aspiration filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Shocker.
What I wanted to do was find Aspiration's bankruptcy filing. In this packet, there is a clue. And this clue was initially quite strange to me as just a sports journalist. But I believe that this clue may be of new interest to the DOJ and the FBI, as well, by the way, as the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission, all of whom have been investigating Aspiration in parallel to me. Because for all of the very famous celebrity Avengers who got paid by these politically ambitious bros to sell their genius billion-dollar company to the world, the guy who got Aspiration's most important and most revealing endorsement deal by far has never been identified by anyone in public until now.
Dun, dun, dun. Wait, you're telling me Of all the rich and famous people they paid to be part of this, to legitimize this, right? Iron Man, the guy from The Revenant, right? All these people, the guy from Degrassi High. Kawhi that's the apex? That is the highest paid celebrity endorser of this?
He was an investor, or he was actually a receiver of money?
Kawhi Leonard received money. It does feel important to establish what makes him, right? Like what distinguishes him, from Drake and Iron Man and all of those celebrity Avengers that you referenced.
Oh, he's the worst personality ever. Like, it's in terms of you want someone outgoing and can sell something and be very vivacious and inspire a good, positive energy. That's not who he is. He's a very quiet, reserved guy. He doesn't really tend to go to the spotlight. Most of his commercials, he doesn't have a speaking role in.
The more that I hear Amin say the word quiet and talking about Kawhi, I'm like, his name is basically the adjective.
Yeah.
That was the summer of 2019. He and Serge Ibaka, they win the NBA title with the Raptors, and the courtship of prime Kawhi Leonard, the most sought-after free agent in professional basketball, begins. The Clippers losing SGA, all those picks, getting Kawhi and Paul George, that basically reshaped the modern NBA. But the second thing, which is related to that, is that according to multiple NBA executives that I interviewed, lots of not just fans, but executives were shocked, even suspicious, eyebrows fully raised, at how the once lowly Clippers had convinced Kawhi to choose them, especially over the Lakers, right? They were the most furious about all of this. All of the rumors, the conspiracies. You may recall that they centered around a mysterious relative who served as Kawhi Leonard's power broker.
Uncle Dennis.
And so in comes Uncle Dennis Robertson, who, and this is now 2019, according to The Athletic, was the center of these complaints by NBA teams about how the Clippers landed Kawhi Leonard. And they were so numerous, let's recall, that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the league, finally agreed to investigate them.
Now, the Uncle Dennis portion of this is going to come back to haunt Kawhi because historically, they've always been pressing for a lot more than just the initial payment that's coming out of that salary cap. The Spurs have history negotiating with them, and also the Raptors. And just going back to that point that Pablo had brought up, interesting to know that NBA executives were very suspicious that the Clippers landed Kawhi and Paul George, because let's remember, PG-13 was coming off that MVP season and he just re-signed with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They did everything he wanted them to do. PG-13 let it be known that in order for him to re-sign with the Thunder, he wanted Carmelo on the team. And the Thunder had went out and pursued him from the Knicks. So quite a few dynamics that are playing out there.
And the main focus was, in fact, whether Uncle Dennis had requested improper benefits from NBA teams in exchange for Kawhi Leonard, these secret sweeteners. And the most notable sweetener, as sources told Sam Amick of The Athletic, it was, quote, a guaranteed amount of off-court endorsement money that they could expect if Kawhi Leonard played for their team, end quote. And this, David, is a serious violation of NBA rules. Why?
Because there's a salary cap for a reason that's been collectively bargained. And what you have to do for a level playing field is you cannot have any circumvention of that cap. So you're not allowed to give players anything. It all counts. So you can't give them plane tickets. You can't pay the college education of their brothers, sisters, friends. You can't give them cars. You can offer in the contract that's available for public use, like a suite on the road, but they have to pay. Or you can
That's what I was going to say. Tickets
comes out.
The tickets is probably the easiest example for people to understand. If you've seen NBA players with family members who sit courtside, for instance, let's say Ja Morant and his father, the team is not offering that for free to Ja Morant. He is paying face value on those tickets for his father every game.
And just sort of like the philosophy behind the salary cap for people who just aren't familiar with it, This is important because it does what?
It stops the richest owner in the world from being able to do things that the poorest of the rich owners can't do. So there are certain owners, think about this, if you're an owner who makes private planes for a living and you just give a private plane to your player just for S's and G's, that's something that a guy who buys a team who runs a corner, family drugstore wouldn't be able to do.
This is now where we can connect some of the dots. Officially. So Kawhi was only allowed to sign a 3-year, $103 million max contract, which he did, of course. But the big alleged conspiracy, the one that got everybody's eyebrows raised, if you're an executive across the NBA, was that cost-conscious, frugal Kawhi Leonard and his uncle Dennis had apparently found the perfect franchise with an ideal owner who would be happy to give them the illicit sweeteners they demanded, and an owner who, as Amin described, just happened to be the richest sports owner in the world with a current net worth of $175 billion, making him, yes, the 6th richest person in the world, who also happened to be the hyper-competitive former CEO of Microsoft, which also meant that he was still kind of just getting used to the socialist cap that David described that limited his NBA spending power. And Steve Ballmer himself happened to explain all of this to the Acquired podcast in June of this year.
We do have a union. That's very different. What that means in terms of the complexity through the collective bargaining agreement, it also covers things like what's max salary, what trades can you make, all that, very different. You really are business partners with your competitors. That's different. I mean, you actually get together and talk to them. I never did that when I was at Microsoft.
And I want to clarify, in fairness to Steve Ballmer, that no evidence of illicit payment to Kawhi Leonard was ever found, apparently, right? Kawhi re-upped with the Clippers in August of 2021, before the season, then again last year, another extension. And The Athletic ultimately reported about the NBA's investigation, quote, while sources with knowledge of the investigation said no evidence was found indicating that the Clippers had granted any of the lavish requests, the underlying message coming from Commissioner Adam Silver remains. He sees salary cap circumvention as a cardinal sin in the NBA and will always keep a watchful eye on that front. If any relevant evidence of improper benefits surfaces in the future, the league will reopen the investigation and pursue the charges yet again.
So once again, the NBA had investigated Steve Ballmer in 2015 with the DeAndre Jordan situation, and with them acquiring Kawhi Leonard in 2019, they were investigated once again.
The threat of suspension for executives was openly discussed, as was the potential for a loss of draft picks or even the voiding of player contracts as the most extreme of measures, end quote. So this is where I just got to set the stage here. Because so far we've been telling two parallel stories, much like two parallel towers of papers. And what we know is that NBA executives were suspicious of how Steve Ballmer's Clippers landed the most valuable free agent on the market, Kawhi Leonard. That the NBA did not find that Ballmer got Kawhi by sweetening their offer.
Mm-hmm.
But also that in March 2025, this celebrity-endorsed, multi-billion-dollar, allegedly fraudulent tree brokerage named Aspiration, which promises to clear your conscience and your emissions, they file for bankruptcy. And this is where the clue is. What David's looking at with his glasses on is a bankruptcy filing, and there's a list of creditors. The entities to which Aspiration, in all of their alleged fraudulence, still owes the most money. And what I noticed is what David is noticing right now, which is that on that list of creditors, up near the top, above the Boston Red Sox, is an LLC. A tiny little company that Aspiration owes $7 million. And that LLC's name, David, is what?
KL2 Aspire LLC.
Damn, Uncle Dennis could have... Uncle Dennis could have at least switch up the name? KL2 Aspire LLC. Yeah, they were in a rush to get that money, boy.
What I did next was pull the publicly accessible paperwork that KL2 Aspire LLC filed with California's Secretary of State, which happens to be the first document in front of you, Amin.
Okay.
And what does it list there under manager or member name?
Kawhi Leonard.
Whose NBA jersey number, just to connect all of the dots here, happens to be what?
Number 2.
So then the question is, the Aspire part of KL2 Aspire LLC, right? Because, okay, he's getting all this money, millions of dollars. What I started doing was scour the internet for any mentions of Aspiration. Any appearances, tweets, quotes, Instagram posts, anything by Kawhi Leonard endorsing Aspiration. And this was hard to find, which also might seem weird, right? Because every other celebrity Aspiration gave money to was well known. There was Drake offering a statement to Rolling Stone. There was Doc Rivers, Kawhi's own head coach. Robert Downey Jr. was cutting his commercial. That was the whole point of paying the A-list Avengers. But the grand total number of times that I found Kawhi Leonard ever publicly referencing Aspiration was this.
Ultimately, 0.
0.
Now that right there is a red flag. And that's a lot of money too. $28 million for 4 years, unannounced. Very suspicious. Again, a lot of the history with Uncle Dennis trying to shake down teams is going to come back to haunt them. And ever since Kawhi has joined the Clippers, they've been getting shaken down by a few people around Kawhi. Johnny Wilkes, a friend of Uncle Dennis, he tried to sue Jerry West back in 2020 about a couple of outside deals that they arranged. And him and the Clippers have been through multiple appeals and dismissals from the courts. Also, a former workout coach of Kawhi's from his college, San Diego State, has sued the Clippers about owing them some money for getting Kawhi to stay on the team, and that's an ongoing investigation.
0 times
Right.
Kawhi Leonard mentioned Aspiration. And so what I started doing was reaching out to dozens of former Aspiration employees. And I was looking for any information about KL2 Aspire LLC. And what happened was a grand total of 7 of them ultimately agreed to interviews, which is also how I have exclusively obtained the next sheaf of papers in front of you both to turn over. David, please go first. Can you please read what this signed and executed document says?
This endorsement agreement is effective as of April 1, 2022, the effective date, between KL2 Aspire LLC and Aspiration Partners, with a principal place of business in Marina del Rey, California.
Whereas Kawhi Leonard is a professional basketball player in the National Basketball Association, NBA, currently on the roster of the Los Angeles Clippers team. Whereas company desires that KL2 cause Leonard to provide the services of, to promote and market company as more particularly set forth herein.
In consideration of the rights and benefits granted to company hereunder, the company will pay KL2, which is Kawhi, $28 million in cash during the term of this agreement. Company will pay KL2 $7 million each year of the term.
That is Kawhi Leonard's autograph, right next to Andre Cherny, the CEO's autograph, youngest speechwriter in White House history.
Now, for those of you that are watching the visual version, as you can see here, if you look at the date, April 5th of 2022. As we heard earlier from Paul George, his negotiations took place in the fall of 2023, and it continued all the way up into the spring of 2024. So was PG-13 made aware of this kind of deal? And when he was talking about, hey, I was trying to get the same deal Kawhi got, was it really in reference to this?
Next to the Clippers franchise player. But as for the listed address, Amin, for where any and all legal notices for Kawhi Leonard will be sent, what does that say there?
KL2 Aspire LLC, care of Dennis Robertson.
Damn, Uncle Dennis's name is on the fucking paperwork. Damn. Woo-wee. That shit's gonna come back to bite them in the ass right there.
And Uncle Dennis is also listed elsewhere in this contract, by the way, as his nephew's designated representative. And so this is where I just need to mention that on account of the multiple ongoing federal investigations into Aspiration, all the former employees I talked to were very afraid, understandably, to go on tape. But eventually, toward the end of my investigation, I convinced one very important person who worked in the finance department of Aspiration to go on tape, provided we could modulate their voice,
Wow.
which felt fair. Do you remember the first time that you discovered Kawhi Leonard's endorsement agreement with Aspiration?
Oh, it was within the first 30 days of my employment with the company. And I didn't so much as discover it as I was told about it.
What was your reaction? What were you told?
My reaction was, what the f? And I was told, like, oh, these are the major contracts and the major players you really need to be aware of. And we went through a litany of, really, really top tier name contracts. And then, oh, by the way, we also have a marketing deal with Kawhi Leonard, a $28 million organic marketing sponsorship deal with Kawhi. And that if I had any questions about it, essentially don't, because it was to circumvent the salary cap, LOL. There was lots of LOL when things were shared.
Among the endorsement agreements that these famous people, these celebrities were signing with Aspiration, where did the size of Kawhi Leonard's agreement, the $28 million over 4 years, where did that rank?
The single largest sponsorship deal that Aspiration ever made. It completely eclipsed every other agreement. Completely eclipsed it. So every other celebrity endorsement combined would not have met even a quarter of Kawhi Leonard's endorsement.
That's kind of crazy. That includes Drake, Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, pretty much every other celebrity that was on that list. They have way better personalities than Kawhi. So the fact that that deal was never announced, it's going to raise a lot of suspicion. Steve Ballmer's going to have one hell of a pair of tap dancing shoes to get out of this.
So that's including Leonardo DiCaprio and Drake and Robert Downey Jr. and Cindy Crawford and everybody else. Did you ever see proof of Kawhi Leonard marketing or endorsing Aspiration in any way?
Never, not once. The single largest payment to an individual for marketing that Aspiration ever made has completely evaded all press. It's honestly incredible. And it was a very strong pain point for our marketing team. And honestly, like altruistically, like their job is to get Aspiration's name out there. They don't understand why the largest part of their budget that they've actually blown is not delivering.
I should say that we here at Pablo Torre Finds Out attempted to reach out to Kawhi Leonard through the Clippers, through his agent, and through his uncle Dennis, of course, with interview requests followed by detailed questions. But Kawhi's personal team did not respond before our deadline. The Clippers, however, provided a statement on behalf of the organization and owner Steve Ballmer, which reads in part, quote, "Neither Mr. Ballmer nor the Clippers circumvented the salary cap or engaged in any misconduct related to Aspiration. Any contrary assertion is provably false," end quote.
Now pay attention to the wording right there, because even Steve Ballmer, later on when we see his interview, he kind of spoke in these type of terms because legally there is no paperwork that's going to link Steve Ballmer giving Kawhi this money. More than likely, they could receive penalties from the league with the illusion or the assertion of collusion, but there's nothing legally that's going to bind them and be 100% proven.
What's even crazier is that as you comb through it, as you were just attempting to do, what becomes clear is that this is how this $28 million deal, this thing that he never did anything for, was designed. I'm no expert, but the language seems to indicate that he actually, contractually, didn't have to do anything.
Nothing. He didn't have to do anything. There was a clause for an out in every single KPI. So they weren't actually key performance indicators, KPIs. They were, if you feel as though this is something that doesn't align with you, or it's too big of an ask, or maybe you don't want to post on social media, maybe you don't want to wear our gear, just let us know. Or you don't have to let us know, you just don't have to do it.
There's section 3.2, obligations of KL2. That is the heading. Section 3.2, part 4. KL2 may decline to proceed with any action desired by the company under section 3.2, which is the whole section where everything is, all the stuff that he would have to do, if Leonard believes that such proposed actions are not consistent with his beliefs.
Once again, a billionaire like Steve Ballmer with those type of deep pockets, he has teams of lawyers that understand contract language, which we're starting to see. It's going to be hard to tie him fully into this with 100% proof.
And then part 5, right after that, KL2 shall have the exclusive right to control and approve all content and distribution for commercial, non-commercial, or lawful purpose, bearing the athlete endorsements or approved Leonard IP.
And no one in Aspiration had this veto power outside of Kawhi Leonard.
Which is to say that when you look at this, your examination of this indicates that the power dynamic is actually reversed here. That
Exactly.
The client, Kawhi Leonard, seems to be dictating the terms to the company Aspiration.
Correct.
In other words, Kawhi Leonard got from Aspiration a $28 million no-show job.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm honestly so jealous.
I guarantee you LeBron James's contract is nowhere near that with Nike or any other athlete the NBA or any other sport has that has a major endorsement. A lot of these red flags is really what's going to get Steve Ballmer caught up, but the penalties are not going to be crazy because he already checkmated the NBA by owning the land. Regardless if he owns a team or not, the league is going to have to cut him a check. He got prime real estate in LA right there in Inglewood. We're talking about Ballmer already lining himself up to get checks from the Olympics when they come into town, even FIFA with the World Cup coming to North America. The games are not necessarily going to get held in the stadium, but the stadium could serve as a facility for players to practice, etc. And it's almost as if he's double dipping because not only he gets paid from the arena in which he controls, he also collects another payment because he owns the land. Me, myself, when I was in NYC, the organization I work for, they own the land to one of the famous buildings in the city. And the amount of money they made just from owning the land every year is almost enough to buy an NBA team.
So jealous. I mean, he's got the dream. Like, it's within my beliefs to be paid $28 million and do absolutely all as well.
It's incredible. It's literally written so he can never be in breach.
If it's not consistent with his beliefs, David, he doesn't have to do it.
I'm sweating a little bit because I want to understand exactly what the deliverables were and to see whether or not there's opportunity for him to actually get the $28 million without ever allowing them to do anything with his name associated. So
Page 13.
I've done a lot of these.
That's why you're here.
Oh.
David Sampson, architect of many sponsorship endorsement agreements, is now looking through with his lil glasses.
So here's something he has to do. If requested by the company, KL2 shall cause Leonard to be available to sign 50 items.
Jesus Christ.
The signing deals we do, it's like 1,500 items. And it's not 7 million.
If requested.
50, if requested. It shall cause KL2, meaning Kawhi, shall cause Kawhi to be available and to work with team or Leonard's content creators to provide a minimum of 1 photo per month to Aspiration for their usage during the NBA season.
What's 1 photo per month, man?
Well, the point is he did 0 photos per month. So.
But I said,
wait, there's more.
If requested, okay.
This is better. He has to be available, Kawhi does, for $28 million to participate in 5 organic comments, which could be a like or a retweet.
You may wonder how many likes and retweets did he give?
Is it 0?
Of course it's 0!
Oh my God.
He did nothing. He literally did nothing.
And
as far as we could tell. And my source has confirmed, as well as the other 6 sources I spoke to have confirmed.
Did nothing and yet not in breach of contract.
My man Kawhi was probably on there liking OnlyFans. OnlyFans models instead, man. He's still gonna collect that fucking check.
That's the amazing part.
That's the dream.
Right?
That's
it's like, I did nothing wrong, basically, according to this contract.
He does have to do something that's major here.
What is that?
That Leonard has to be available and participate with company to create an annual program in support of the company's reforestation program with a tie to calculating Leonard's carbon footprint given his annual schedule, events, and travel. Boy, I'd love to see that.
Well, it's hard because it didn't happen.
I thought you were going to say that was the one thing he did do.
As David continues to comb
Well, I'm also
this.
looking at the definitions because I want to make sure here.
Oh, yeah, I knew that he would. He's like a pig in shit
I
right
mean,
now.
this-
Like, you give me
He's
a
wallowing.
secret contract that I can pick apart.
What we heard just before about that any deliverable, it's that such proposed actions are not consistent with his beliefs. He doesn't have to do it. And I'm looking in the defined terms, assuming these are all the defined
beliefs?
terms. I'm looking for beliefs.
It is not defined.
So therefore, there is no actual anything in this contract. Now, I've been reading it only for a couple of minutes. This is in real time. But if you've got a qualifier there, which allows you to get out of any of your obligations with something as ephemeral as not consistent with his beliefs without a definition, because beliefs is a small b. I was looking for beliefs with a big B, which would make it a defined term, where you have to say, hey, I don't believe in working on Saturdays, or I don't believe in supporting pig meat because I'm a vegan.
Right.
So you
Big
can
baller
have that
beliefs.
in contracts, that you will not endorse something that goes against your beliefs, but it's a small b, and there's no defined term.
He might small b believe in not doing anything.
Yeah, it's against my
And-
beliefs to do this.
David?
I'm trying to come to grips with 2.10b here. And I'm sorry, but this is
Explain.
a major provision in the contract that
Ooh.
I-
Please share.
I'm not used to seeing. It's called termination. It's when would an agreement be terminated? So when can they say, you know what, we're not paying you?
Now, this part right here is what's going to tie in to what Paul George was talking about, where he kept emphasizing the no trade clause, or just being traded in general. We have to look at him talking about that with a keen eye. David Sampson is about to explain how Kawhi Leonard's outside endorsement deal could be terminated if he got traded.
And normally there would be provisions for termination if you're a felon, if you're convicted of a felony, sometimes if you're just arrested for a felony, if you do anything for disparagement, if you bring bad juju upon the company, it can trigger a termination. This termination, and it's a termination for cause, which
This is
means
in the Aspiration endorsement deal.
this is in his $28 million endorsement deal. Termination for cause if Leonard is no longer an employee of the team for any reason, and the team, capital T, is defined as the Clippers.
Yes.
So an endorsement deal that a company does with a player is usually you don't always get the rights to their marks.
Right.
So it's like blank uniforms.
Yep.
And so it doesn't matter
No.
whether the player is playing for the Clippers or not. But in this agreement, it's a termination for cause if he's not an employee of the team.
That's another giveaway that this is a outside circumvention with the cap, man. Jesus Christ. Again, a lot of this is under the illusion of assumption, but there's nothing legally that can tie Ballmer of just giving Kawhi money in his hand outside of the cap.
For avoidance of doubt, which is what you say in a contract when you want to make sure nobody screws it up, if Leonard is still being paid by the capital T team, but is a member of another NBA organization or has retired, either of those instances are a triggering event for termination by the company.
So an example of that is if Kawhi Leonard got bought out by the Clippers and then ends up signing with the Knicks. Technically, the Clippers are still paying him the remaining amount, but he is an employee of the New York Knicks now. And what that contract is saying very clearly, very bluntly, we're just going to tackle this right now in writing. If that happens, it triggers a termination clause.
I love that David just found that.
I can't believe that Kawhi Leonard, that anyone would ask for that or agree to it
Well,
if it were not.
It seems to be, perhaps, one of the things in this otherwise very laissez-faire approach to what you got to do that the Clippers found, you might presume, quite important.
Just be on the Clippers.
It makes a lot of sense because Kawhi's recent extension has a 15% trade kicker. Just in case by some miracle the Clippers quickly get rid of him, that at least he can make up for some of the money that he has lost with that outside deal. Because remember, this outside endorsement deal started in 2022 and it's for 4 years. So it will last until 2026, April of 2026 to be exact. So Kawhi Leonard in his 2024 extension, he got a 15% trade kicker in case he was somehow not part of the team, because that would be what his last 2 years under that outside endorsement deal with Aspiration. So he protected his ass just in case by some miracle in 2025, 2026, he wasn't on the Clippers.
Let's put this as bluntly as possible. So, to be clear, Kawhi can not post anything, can never like or retweet anything, can not sign the balls, right? Cannot do the photo
The
op,
reforestation program.
not show up for any events. But his ass better be a Clipper throughout all of that. That's the thing that would jeopardize the $28 million.
I had to reread it before bringing it up to you two because it can't be, but it is.
It is signed
2.10B.
and executed under those terms. And so what all of this led me to do, Amin, is get back to sports, right? Because what I was curious about was, okay, so we have all these documents about the $28 million for the no-show job. I wanted to put that against the timeline of his contract extensions with the Clippers, because Kawhi Leonard signed his first extension in August 2021, before that season. The month after that, it turns out, Steve Ballmer, this is September, broke ground on the Intuit Dome. Now, this is, David, the most expensive NBA arena ever constructed, his grand creation. And though Kawhi was still out recovering, you might remember the right knee injury.
Yes.
He did show up for that.
That wasn't actual digging for the stadium.
It's totally ridiculous.
All right, guys, get to work.
You bring in a bunch of dirt and you just get
Oh,
shovels.
that's not the actual ground.
No, it's not even on the ground. Kawhi looks like he's coming back from the gym.
It's the combination that always bothers
Everyone else is wearing like slacks and suits and all that stuff, and Kawhi just like popped in hoodie and shorts. But speaking of digging, I want to go back to the coverage of the extension that Kawhi signed just weeks before that scene, right? Because before those shovels went into the ground, you may recall that he signs this 4-year, $176.3 million extension. And you may recall also that something didn't quite add up at the time. According to The Ringer, I mean, you may turn over the next page and read the highlighted passage.
That Kawhi Leonard officially returned to the Clippers on Thursday came as no surprise. What has provoked some head scratching, though, is the structure of the contract he decided to ink. How perfectly Kawhi, even when there's no mystery, there's a little bit of mystery.
And this was because Kawhi Leonard, as you continue to read through this, essentially did the Clippers what appears to be a favor. So here we have this notably frugal superstar who is complain about the Wingstop coupons level frugal, and he did not do what everyone expected him to do, given that, which was sign the shortest or the longest possible deal in order to maximize his earnings. Instead, to the surprise of many NBA insiders, Kawhi Leonard very helpfully opted for a middle ground. And I just want to acknowledge here that the timing of Kawhi's extension from 2021 does not align super neatly with the paperwork on his $28 million aspiration endorsement deal, David, because that took effect when again? When did it say that on that?
Right in the start, April 1 of 2022.
But now, Amin, what I would like you to do is turn over the page after that. So that's the first type of document you may recall that you ever looked at. This is the original registration for KL2 Aspire LLC that got filed with the state of California, establishing an LLC whose name indicates that it was entirely created to take money from Aspiration. It says f***ing Aspire in the title. Look at the top of that piece of paper under file date.
November 22nd, 2021.
That's the same month that they started building that new arena. So it looks like my man Uncle Dennis was already in a hurry to get his money, setting things up 5 months earlier before the official deal began. And later on in this segment, we'll hear from Steve Ballmer as he spoke about how he introduced Kawhi in November of 2021 to Aspiration.
We're now right there at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, the beginning of that season, when he signs the extension, when the ground is broken, and this LLC, KL2 Aspire LLC, gets registered with the state of California. And now we're getting, guys, to the thing we have not yet established about the fall of 2021 when it comes to the once unsolvable question of salary cap circumvention in the NBA, which is the direct financial relationship between Aspiration on the one hand and Steve Ballmer and his Clippers on the other. But the people who know Steve Ballmer, what they say is that there is no product Steve Ballmer cares about more, down to the tiniest little detail, than the NBA team he purchased from noted racist Donald Sterling back in 2014. And this was evidenced, by the arena that Ballmer admirably spent billions of his own money designing in his own image.
They have sensors in the seats that measure how loud each section is. And so routinely they'll come up and say, this was the loudest section in that last segment of play. Everyone gets free t-shirts or free stuff.
The level of microscopic detail that Steve Ballmer cared about, the sensors, the toilets, everything, it all is to say that when it came to picking the company whose patch would get stitched onto every Clippers jersey and whose signage would adorn the back of every courtside seat, Steve Ballmer handpicked Aspiration to become the first founding partner of the Intuit Dome.
So notice how Steve Ballmer's hands is in every aspect of this, and he's very detail-oriented. But yet, when he's questioned about the details of his Aspiration deal, he's very nonchalant. And we'll see this later on. Just keep this in mind.
The first arena to become 100% carbon neutral from day one. The, quote, most sustainable arena in the world, end quote. And the Clippers announced this at Media Day in September 2021 with Steve Ballmer sitting right next to noted Clippers and Martin Luther King fan Joe Sandberg.
There are a few people in the business world and in the sports world that I admire as much as Steve Ballmer. This is a true visionary and an original thinker, and those are rare and few and far between in this day and age. But it's visionaries and original thinkers who change the course of history. And we're partnered with Steve and the Clippers to change the course of Los Angeles sports history and all global sports history, which is turning sports into a tool to fight the climate crisis. So Aspiration, in partnership with the Clippers, will be delivering tools to all Clippers fans to make their experience watching the Clippers carbon neutral and even carbon negative, so that your choice of being a Clippers fan isn't just a choice of who you root for, but it's an expression of what you believe.
Once again, beliefs are quite instrumental here. As proclaimed in a headline on NBA.com.
LA Clippers and Aspiration set a new standard for social responsibility in sports.
Or, as CNBC put it, David,
LA Clippers signed $300 million plus arena sponsorship deal with Green Bank Aspiration.
Just listen to Steve Ballmer himself while sitting next to Joe Sandberg at Media Day.
The pièce de résistance, as we went through this, is when we had a chance to really sit down and meet the folks from Aspiration, to have our first founding partner be a company that focuses in on providing services to consumers and businesses to reduce or even go negative on their own carbon footprints was a great thing, particularly not only
Aspiration agreed to pay the Clippers that staggering amount, more than $300 million, over 23 years.
Now, I assume you don't have that agreement, although you've got 4,000 pages and 25,000 trees.
That might be in there, honestly.
And I keep turning things over. But
again, David, let's put this in perspective.
That's a naming rights deal.
That's a naming rights deal, but usually what do you get in a naming rights deal?
The name.
The name.
If they have founding partners, you get special places in your ballpark and your arena where they're called pillar sponsors.
Oh, but they got the patch. They were going to get the patch. Look at the back of the courtside seat behind another Marvel superheroes, Simu Liu. Aspiration's right there. And this is where I just got to point out that the tower of documents we have been sort of like gazing at over here, it's actually different from the documents we have already examined. These 3,445 unpublished documents that I've obtained from inside of Aspiration, they range from bank statements to signed contracts to fancy pitch decks to internal emails. And what they do is they speak to Steve Ballmer's personal influence and awareness of the inner workings of this green bank that is now under federal investigation for an allegedly massive fraud. So, David, the next sheet of paper you can turn over is an internal email about partnership opportunities in sports and entertainment sent by Joe Sandberg to his fellow co-founder, Andre Czerny, and another Aspiration executive on October 29th, 2021.
Ballmer himself is enthusiastic to help and will personally be a reference and advocate where we ask him. So please keep that front of mind.
And then, if you will, there's an email on November 1st, 2021 from Steve Ballmer, personally connecting the CEO of Intuit with Andre and Joe.
Since Intuit and Aspiration already have a business relationship and all of us share a passion for the Clips and our Intuit Dome project, I thought it might be fun for the four of us to take in a game together sometime soon.
Wow. With this bankruptcy and all the emails getting out, it's showing the close relationship Ballmer had with Aspiration. So as we continue on later in this segment, we'll see him kind of throw his hands up as far as knowing the details and just the overall background of Aspiration, which is very ironic. And the real question is, how is the NBA really going to react to this? Because they need Steve Ballmer. He's actually increased the standards of NBA teams, not only buying the team for an inflated price back in the 2010s, he actually now has changed the standards, which some owners may be uncomfortable with, but he changed this exact standard, which doesn't get talked about too much. He didn't ask for taxpayer money in order to finance that stadium. That's a new standard that owners don't necessarily want it to be the norm. The NFL owners are in unison with this. Even though they make way more money, they do not want it to be the norm that they don't collect taxpayer money to fund these stadiums. Steve Ballmer funding everything himself and just kind of owning the whole ecosystem so much that he actually sold the forum in order to avoid any type of antitrust activity that's going on over there down in Inglewood. He just has that much control.
To which Joe Sandberg replies, that same day, David?
This is to Steve Ballmer from Joe Sandberg. Steve, thank you and you're right. Looking forward to our spending time together. Andre and I admire Intuit's commitment to sustainability and your smart partnership with the Clippers! Exclamation point. Go Clippers! Exclamation point.
Less than a month after that exchange,
Just 3 months after the signing of the extension,
Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis registered KL to Aspire LLC. Now, less than a month after that, December 2021, it was announced that Steve Ballmer, who is again hailed as the very best investor of the last 20 years, joined Oaktree Capital Management in investing a total of $315 million into Aspiration, which was subsequently valued at $2.3 billion. So this is how my source characterized the mood around the company at the time.
Aspiration was at a great place at that time. Finances, like, listen, let's go have a pizza party every day. It was looking great. But if you peel back the layers of the onion a little bit more, you see that that money was spent quite quickly.
So according to contracts and emails that I obtained, $50 million, $50 million of this money came from Ballmer's personal LLC.
Now, for those of you that are looking at the visual version, as you can see, the $50 million, eventually we'll find out that there was an additional $20 million that was owed to Kawhi Leonard in stock options, which would make his total endorsement $48 million. And that extra $2 million is left over. It could be a commission cut for the middleman company to facilitate that type of transaction.
And that LLC, by the way, is named Pol Pot. Not
Pol Pot.
Not Pol Pot, the brutal Cambodian dictator, but Pol Pot. How dare you make that mistake? And according to all 7 former Aspiration employees I spoke to, that enormous infusion of money from Steve Ballmer, $50 million, is what allowed the allegedly fraudulent Green Bank to quite eagerly pay Kawhi Leonard $28 million for an alleged no-show job.
The source says in there that the money was spent very quickly. Some might say this money was spent before it even got there because it was just the clearinghouse.
Better not.
Now, Amino Hassett, he's always on point, man. Low key, Amino Hassett is always on point. For some of you that are not in the know, a clearinghouse in the business world is basically just a middleman that makes sure a financial transaction goes through between 2 different parties. A prime example I can give of this is when Elon Musk purchased Twitter. I believe the price was over $40 billion. So picture a temporary LLC that comes in and makes sure that that transaction goes through smooth between both parties. Amino Hassett right here is alluding that that was Aspiration's real job in this whole Clipper endeavor.
The source says in there that the money was spent very quickly. Some might say this money was spent before it even got there because it was just the clearinghouse.
Better not say that.
Some would say.
Because if you're saying that, then an investigation has to follow. And if there is any thread where money's invested into Aspiration and then is out the door to Kawhi by the transitive property of flow of funds. It went right from Ballmer to Leonard.
The term that my sources called this arrangement, which again, neither Aspiration nor the Clippers nor Kawhi Leonard ever announced, despite the tonnage of announcements that they were making all the time, was, quote, sweetener. And this is a term that originates from the next email in front of you, Amin, sent by Joe Sandberg amid a much longer argument with one of his business partners, because a very defensive Sandberg was trying to preempt the idea that Ballmer, not unlike Kawhi with the Clippers, embraced Aspiration for any other alleged reason.
So this is an email to quite a few people. There's a lot of people on the CC line, but the relevant portion. What you're implying is that Ballmer's investment was a sweetener and impure when the math above pretty blatantly contradicts your implication.
Now, Ballmer said that investment was for his initial percentage of ownership, which is under 5%. And the reason why it being under 5% is very important here, because if he owned more than 5% of Aspiration, under the NBA's rules with owners, it's going to be a conflict of interest of why Aspiration, a company that he owns more than 5% of, is giving money to Kawhi.
In conclusion, it really pisses me off.
So that is Joe Sandberg, who would be arrested by the federal government. And I took all of this, all of that stuff in that email, to my source.
Joe is the one who brings up a sweetener, and Joe is the one who brings up the impurity of the contract.
The way it reads is that, like, Joe Sandberg was almost like waiting for someone at some point to accuse him of something.
He is the first person to bring it to the conversation in writing and not offline either. So in an attempt to cover his tracks, he actually opens up the door to conversation in question.
It does seem very clear that the people inside of Aspiration loved to email each other.
Yeah, that's stupid idiots. Quite frankly. Yeah, let's put it in writing. Great idea.
I should say that we reached out to Joe Sandberg, who declined to comment through an attorney. But the thing about the bet that Steve Ballmer made on Aspiration, the problem came in 2022. So this is when the wheels of Aspiration began to fall off. So they'd acquired all these celebrity endorsements, right? But not enough actual business. That's unfortunately the story of this company. And in October 2022, Aspiration began advertising even in a pitch deck for investors that I obtained that it had a new customer to help compensate for the lack of business. The new customer was Qatar, the country. Qatar.
It's always a good way to
Qatar,
bail out.
According to this pitch deck, had hired Aspiration to zero out the carbon footprint of the 2022 World Cup.
Yes, of course.
Of course, according to my 7 sources, this was not true. So the point being that they were flailing, the cash was draining out, on the road to bankruptcy, and Aspiration, despite all of this, had a top priority in October 2022 internally, per my 7 sources, and that was incredibly clear.
There were weekly meetings about who was going to get paid what and when. And during those weekly meetings, Kawhi Leonard's contract was always set to be paid.
Even in a time of total financial hardship for the company. Why?
There were multiple reasons we were given. One being that Kawhi's uncle was calling.
Wait, this is Uncle Dennis.
Uncle Dennis. Uncle Dennis was calling, and Uncle Dennis demanded payment. It was priority one. Like, it was something that had to be done.
Damn, my man Uncle Dennis does not play when it comes to his money.
It was crucial to our relationships with Ballmer and the Clippers.
He's calling about his coupons. Uncle Dennis was like, where's the Wingstop?
Oh, this ain't coupons.
Obviously, the stakes are much, much higher, but it's the same general principle that this is a guy who wouldn't let coupons go. He damn sure ain't gonna let $7 million go.
Bingo. I tried to ask Uncle Dennis himself about this via email and phone. We did not hear back before our deadline. Of course, we did request an interview with Steve Ballmer. We sent him and his people detailed questions about all of this. And we received this statement from the Clippers on behalf of Ballmer and the team, which reads in full, quote, Neither Mr. Ballmer nor the Clippers circumvented the salary cap or engaged in any misconduct related to Aspiration. Any contrary assertion is provably false. The team ended its relationship with Aspiration years ago during the 2022-23 season when Aspiration defaulted on its obligations. Neither the Clippers nor Mr. Ballmer was aware of any improper activity by Aspiration or its co-founder until after the government instituted its investigation. The team and Mr. Ballmer stand ready to assist law enforcement in any way they can. End quote. Now, for what it's worth, I should also say that Aspiration had given a statement last year that the company, quote, has delivered carbon credits to the Clippers over the past several years and based on ongoing obligations will continue to source and deliver credits annually through the last delivery in 2043. We take our work in the climate action category seriously, end quote. And so, Amin, by the way, here we have something that the NBA has been searching for.
And if I'm the league and I'm watching this episode and I'm saying, wait, and they've got the paperwork to back it up, this feels like a paper trail that would lead you to believe that the Clippers, through Aspiration, managed to give extra compensation above and beyond what the collective bargaining agreement would allow.
It's at least a reopener.
Yeah.
With what Adam Silver said.
Well, again, let's quote it again, David. According to Athletic, he sees salary cap circumvention as a cardinal sin in the NBA and will always keep a watchful eye on that front. If any relevant evidence of improper benefits surfaces in the future, the league will reopen the investigation and pursue the charges yet again. The threat of suspension for executives was openly discussed, as was the potential for a loss of draft picks or even the voiding of player contracts as the most extreme of measures, end quote.
Now, there's a few implications right there that's quite interesting because the NBA is in a conundrum with Steve Ballmer. He has the deepest pockets. He's actually raised up the value of a lot of teams in the league, just a standard of buying an NBA team by purchasing the Clippers for $2 billion very early on. And him owning the land, just the land that was guaranteed to Steve Ballmer in 2019, that pretty much solidified that Steve Ballmer, even if he sold the team, he's still going to get checks from the NBA as they will be operating on those grounds. So even though they may not want to drop the hammer hard on Steve Ballmer, the executives and the agent tied to Kawhi Leonard, they could potentially get blackballed from the league, depending on how deep of a level was their involvement. And when their careers are on the line, who knows what kind of beans they're going to spill.
The dynamics here also, just to spell it out, this is not just any owner, David.
The thing we have to think about is the power that Ballmer has within the NBA. He's actually been very good for the league. He brings credibility to the league. He
replaced Donald Sterling.
Well, but right. Anybody could have replaced him.
But he's now sitting courtside with Barack Obama. He's the richest owner in all of sports.
That's what it is. So it's not an Adam Silver issue with Steve Ballmer. My biggest interesting point here is what other owners will take from this, because they can call on Adam Silver and say, hey, you got to look into this because this is not right.
And also, who knows how many other owners are actually upset the fact that he proved that owners should be financing the stadiums themselves and not using taxpayer dollars. Once again, the only difference between the NFL owners is that they already know this. A guy like Jerry Jones will never ever finance a stadium himself and not take taxpayers' dollars, because that's the quote-unquote hoodwink deal that he has with the other NFL owners. And Steve Ballmer, being in the NBA, he kind of broke that hoodwink deal among other owners with the Intuit Dome. The land, the stadium, even the rival stadium, the Forum, was purchased by Steve Ballmer.
Now, it's not like Ballmer's won a bunch of championships. It's not like, has he even been to an NBA Finals since he bought the team?
No,
not at all.
The Clippers have been to the conference finals once in team history, and that was the one that happened in 2021. That was the first time they'd ever made it out of the second round, going back to even Buffalo. So this is a team that is synonymous with abject failure. That's not the part that other NBA owners, other NBA teams are envious about. What they're envious about is the massive amounts of money that they're able to throw around doing things like, because guess what, David? It's great that they built their arena from scratch, all out of pocket.
Well, it's also like Steve Ballmer is the embodiment of why you would want a salary cap.
Yes.
His spending is uncapped in all these other ways. But in this way, when it comes to the stars, that are again, to pun intend this, the governor on the governor, which is what we call MBA owners now. Can he get the stars? And so here we have a clue in the bankruptcy filing that we followed, that was hidden in plain sight, that got us to sign and execute paperwork, got us to Uncle Dennis, to the Aspiration logos that were supposed to be on the Clippers jerseys and all over the most sustainable arena in the world. And you get these private emails as a result showing Ballmer's personal connectedness to Aspiration. And when it comes to Kawhi, again, it's just funny when the absence of evidence becomes the evidence.
No, that's...
But that's what an endorsement deal would force us to reckon with, is that feels like clearly something, even though it's definitionally nothing.
Nothing. He didn't have to do anything.
The question to me, and this is the question that has been phrased by the 7 sources inside of Aspiration that I talked to, the former employees, was this money going on what was framed to me as a round trip? Was it starting one place, going all the way around, and surprise, it's doing what the guy who gave the money up wanted it to do to help his own interests?
Mm-hmm.
And so this all raises this second related question, which is the more serious and vast question in the real world, right? Because this question is the one that the DOJ and the FBI and the CFTC and SEC, which are all, again, looking into this deeply broken company, as my source put it, characterizing what their coworkers at Aspiration have lately been asking.
Why is Steve Ballmer backing a huge historic raise for Aspiration? Like, why? Also, what was the main motivation for such a large raise? Because from inside Aspiration, we see like the glitz and the glam of the celebrities that are posting, but from the finance side, accounts receivable were wild. Like the actual amount of money that needed to be coming in order for our revenue to count towards real revenue was astronomical in comparison to what was actually being received. There's a lot of these one-off LOIs that existed, letters of intent. There's all these one-off deals, but this proof of concept from a business perspective, at least from the finance side, did not make sense to the point where forecasting felt like casting spells.
When you look at this list, how many of those, and these are all listed as deals, letters of intent, dated as of early 2021, before Ballmer had made his big investment, how many of those are fake?
80, 90%.
They just said that 80 to 90% of the LOIs were fake?
As of early 2021. Listed in the paperwork that Steve Ballmer could examine before he decided to invest or not, all of the $50 million that he put in.
Yeah, this is a little bit more than cap circumvention.
Given this special influence and the way Steve Ballmer was investing millions, but also getting paid millions via the Clipper sponsorship, with the promise of an even bigger payout, by the way, if Aspiration were a real company that went public successfully to the tune of that $2.3 billion value.
They went public as a SPAC. Let that be known. They went public as a SPAC. They didn't go public like a Fortune 500 company that has real product that they sell and real revenues that they could report on. They went public as a fucking SPAC.
Valuation. What did Steve Ballmer, the very best investor of the last 20 years, know about everything else going on at Aspiration? And when did Steve Ballmer know it?
So Adam Silver on one hand, and then you've got the government on the other. The government doesn't really care about salary cap circumvention.
Correct.
At all. NBA owners, NBA, they care deeply. The federal government cares deeply if there's any sort of fraud perpetuated on a common investor.
And that is a question that the NBA and the federal government would both have some curiosity about. What this is a story that starts with a clue in a bankruptcy filing, gets us to a giant NBA scandal, and gets us back to the real world where some shit is actually at stake.
Now, finally, Pablo touched base on one of the co-founders of Aspiration running the same game, this time on the political side.
I happened to encounter the very person whose signature was right next to Kawhi Leonard on that $28 million no-show endorsement deal in the pages of the New York Times. The splashy headline this time was, quote, Democrats lay groundwork for a Project 2029.
The title is an unsubtle play on Project 2025, the independently produced right-wing agenda that Mr. Trump spent much of last year's campaign distancing himself from and much of his first few months back in power executing. They plan to roll out an agenda over the next 2 years in quarterly installments through Mr. Czerny's publication, Democracy, a Journal of Ideas. The goal is to turn it into a book, just like Project 2025, and to rally leading Democratic presidential candidates behind those ideas during the 2028 primary season. Mr. Czerny, now the president of the journal he helped create, called the assemblage the Avengers of Public Policy.
Mr. Czerny, as in Andre Czerny, co-founder and former CEO of Aspiration, whom I very much wanted to talk to, is back. He's in politics. And so last month, I tried to connect with him on LinkedIn, and he accepted.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
I tried to start a conversation, inviting Andre to come on Pablo Torre Finds Out to discuss several things. The future of the Democratic Party, which he wants to lead. His experience working with Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. The last time he talked to his co-founder, Joe Sandberg, his friend from, Harvard. But I also wanted to ask Andre, why did you resign as the CEO of Aspiration in October 2022, right as, all that was really hitting the fan? And relatedly, why he ran for U.S. Congress a second time in Arizona in 2024, because what I wanted to find out was whether the company he had co-founded to fight climate change had even been planting, as Andre once proclaimed, quote,
we're planting more trees than there are in Central Park every day.
End quote. But I could not.
No chance.
He didn't respond. And when we reached out to Andre Czerny with detailed questions, Andre did not respond. But all of this is to say that I did want to pose that question to somebody, this question about the trees, and so I did.
You would have to go in order to confirm that the trees were planted. Usually you have a project manager who's providing those real-time updates. Like you would have someone physically representing the project for Aspiration in that project. Whether it was daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, at a minimum, someone would be there to confirm.
How often did Aspiration visit the sites of the tree plantings?
That's a great question. To my knowledge, out of all of the projects that Aspiration undertook for carbon offsets, there was only one site visit during my tenure.
Wait, so just to be clear, I'm looking at a spreadsheet with a zillion, approximately, projects having to do with forestation and tree plantings, and you're saying there was one site visit during your tenure there?
Yeah, to one project.
What does that say to you?
Either they're not concerned with whether or not the trees are being planted, or it's not real, or both.
Yeah, unfortunately, nonprofits, a lot of them, wealthy people just love to funnel money to friends and other people that they're trying to submit payments to for certain favors. And this is a common thing in America. It's nothing new here. Just look at the way the former president, Joe Biden, was moving around with his son on top of certain company boards receiving payments. Okay, so now Steve Ballmer, at a very unusual turn, shows up to Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN's campus, and they air an overnight interview with him defending himself and just explaining the overall situation from the Clippers side. And throughout this interview, Ballmer kind of made it seem like he wasn't aware of certain things with Aspiration. But before we get to that interview, just take a look how Steve Ballmer was singing a different tune, as he was very detailed on the partnership with Aspiration. And he is a person that was so hands-on with this overall Intuit Dome project that he knew the number of toilets, and they were even tracking how long it took fans to use the restroom, grab their food, and get to the game.
I love Intuit Dome. Since we talked a lot about products, and I've been involved in, I'll say the visioning. I don't call myself a visionary, but what should this product look like? And particularly those that, a number of them, both Windows, but also certainly on the back-end products, back-end meaning they're not customer visible. But I would say Intuit Dome's probably the product for which I had the clearest vision I've ever had. I knew what I wanted. It evolved some because we went and looked at, a bunch of other arenas. But I had a point of view. I know what user I wanted to make happy. I wanted to make Intuit Dome the best place for the hardcore basketball fan.
Toilets! 1,160 toilets and urinals! 3 times the NBA average number of toilets and urinals! We do not want people waiting in line. We want them to get back to their damn seats. Pièce de résistance, as we went through this, is when we had a chance to really sit down and meet the folks from Aspiration. To have our first founding partner be a company that focuses in on providing services to consumers and businesses to reduce or even go negative on their own carbon footprints was a great thing.
And now we'll hear from Steve Ballmer as he spoke to Ramona Shelburne at ESPN, and he sounded very nonchalant when it comes to the details of his sponsorship with Aspiration, unlike those 2 previous sound bites we just heard. And keep in mind, Steve Ballmer, outside of Microsoft, he's made his money in his name as being a guy who is a very well thought out investor. But again, in this interview, in certain circumstances, he acted very nonchalant when it comes to a partnership with a sponsor that is carrying your name brand. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Up front, I want to say one thing very clearly. We, the Clippers, have abided by the salary cap circumvention rules because that's the right thing to do. And we have done that. I happen, for what it's worth, to think it's a very important rule in terms of promoting competitiveness and equal playing field across the league. But whether I agreed with it or not, it's the rule. And we've absolutely abided by that. We cannot pay a player anything beyond what's in his standard player contract, and we cannot cause anybody else to pay the player what's beyond their standard contract. And that would include, for example, sponsors, endorsers. That is verboten. We can't do that, and we didn't, certainly in this instance. I mean, we can have sponsors. The players can do endorsement contracts. We can do sponsorship deals with the same companies that they do endorsement contracts. We cannot have any involvement in their negotiation with the companies who sponsor them. We didn't in this case, and we never have. Let's pick up from the point about what the rules are. You say, okay, we know what the rules are. Was there an exception made in terms of our relationship with Aspiration? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is a company that I got to know, frankly, through them approaching us about a sponsorship deal. My family and I were super keen to do work to stem climate change. We think that's an important thing. I was in the process of even changing the design of Intuit Dome so that we could be carbon neutral.
Now, him right there saying that they're trying to design the stadium so they could be carbon neutral. First of all, there's nothing really about the business of operating a stadium that's ever going to be carbon neutral. You look at the amount of trucks that have to come in, load up equipment, the amount of cars that come into the arena that have to park, gas emissions, the amount of food that's wasted, the amount of trash that's created that has to somehow go somewhere. There's nothing carbon efficient or just eco-friendly about running a business with a stadium. So just this whole partnership sounds weird to me. It just sounds good on paper, but in reality, this shit don't even add up.
Then we meet this company that focuses in on an aspect of carbon neutrality. To me, it seemed like a match, kind of made in heaven, if you will. And then they offered us an unbelievable sum of money, $330 million. That by itself, one of the biggest sponsorship deals ever done. And it wasn't naming rights. We had turned them down on the naming rights deal because we liked Intuit, blah, 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 blah. But they offered even more money. So we had a fantastic deal with a company that fit with stuff we care about personally. And because I was in...
Now, him saying that they offered even more money for the naming rights, even though he rejected it, remember, if they had gone through and got the naming rights to the arena, the NBA, especially after the FTX scandal, would investigate Aspiration and how their whole operation of that organization worked.
I read their business plan. Remember, they defrauded me. They defrauded many other investors much bigger than me. But I read the business plan and said, hey, this makes sense to support them, to support us. We made an investment in the company. So all fine. I had no control over this company. That is important, actually, under the salary cap rules. I owned less than 3% of the company.
Now, that right there is very important, what he's saying right here. He owned less than 3% of the company, because had he owned 5% or more, any type of transactions they had with Kawhi would actually violate the circumvention or just the CBA rules with the players. So right then and there, he's clarifying not necessarily to the everyday fan that's listening in, but to the higher ups or just the legal side to the league as far as his involvement with Aspiration, because that $50 million payment was supposed to be for that 3%. Let's listen to him say that again one more time.
We made an investment in the company. So all fine. I had no control over this company. That is important, actually, under the salary cap rules. I owned less than 3% of the company. There were investors who put in a lot more money than I did. Mm-hmm. I had no board seat. I had no control. Heck, it was a fraudulent company. It's possible nobody had any control. And now you look back and say, could I believe anything they said? Could their employees have been believing anything they said? I don't know. But at the time, it was an exciting deal for us to go do. Now, we had already signed our deal with Kawhi Leonard. We signed that in August of 21. It was a 4-year deal, 4th year at his option. It was the most that we could pay him. That was the most we could do under the rules, if you will. I've been excited about that, even though we knew Kawhi had to rehab a year from a torn ACL. So, kind of okay, this is going to work. This is really going to work, and it did. All done. I remember where I was. We're very excited. That would have been August. In September, we got the deal done for sponsorship and investment. We announced that. And at that time, we hadn't even introduced, Aspiration hadn't asked, or we hadn't introduced for sure, Kawhi to Aspiration. We were done. They were done. We were done with Kawhi. We were done with Aspiration. The deals were all locked and loaded. Then they did request to be introduced to Kawhi. Under the rules, we can introduce our sponsors to our athletes. We just can't be involved.
Now, once again, just going over his timeline, November 2021 is when construction officially began for their new arena. They locked in Kawhi a few months earlier in August of 2021 for 4 years, $176 million. So just looking at November, we have construction began for the new arena. Kawhi was introduced to Aspiration. And also, when we looked at Pablo Torre's paperwork, we have Kawhi and Uncle Dennis registering that K2 Aspiration LLC, which is the same company that received the payments from the Aspiration deal, which began 4 months later in April of 2022. So the month of November in the year 2021 was very active. Construction on the new arena began. Kawhi was introduced to Aspiration, and also him alongside Uncle Dennis activated that new LLC that ended up receiving the payments on that same date. They registered it with the state of California. But the sponsorship deal with Aspiration began in April of 2022.
We made an introduction. That was in early November, well past when all of this happens. We had a chance recently to go through all of our relations with Aspiration. This is where you get to kind of how you prove this stuff. We, as part of our cooperation with the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission, we had produced text, emails. We'd already gone through all this stuff because it was part of document production in their investigations. And we even found the email that makes the first introduction. It was early November. I won't remember the exact date. So where could any of this circumvention have happened? It didn't. It couldn't have. The introduction got made, and then they were off to the races on their own. We weren't involved. I eventually learned that they had reached a deal. I have no idea what the deal was.
So, but you see how this looks to the average fan, right? You're invested in the company. It's $50 million as your investment. You're part of the biggest raise that they have as part of the whole building of that company. Then your star player gets a contract for $28 million. He's not required to do anything as part of that contract. He doesn't actually do anything to promote their company. And he signs an extension with you guys right in and around the same time. Like you can see it looks like what it looks like.
Let's talk to the fan. We signed that deal with Kawhi before any of this, before Kawhi even knows these people. We've signed our deal. That's high integrity. We made our deal with Aspiration. Literally, I had no control over the company. Literally, even when I invested, I think there was somebody who put in 6 times as much money as I did. No control. And that's okay. The average fan should understand that. And they went off and made a deal. I don't know what the deal is. Mm-hmm. I know what the reports are with the speculation. I don't know what the deal is or was. And frankly, I can't even tell you whether it's this much different, that much different, or not different at all.
The deal ended up being not that much different than the money you gave as an investment to the company. What was originally discovered was the $28 million that was owed to Kawhi over a 4-year period. What eventually got found out that there was an additional $20 million through stock options, therefore making the total $48 million. So you wonder if Aspiration in a way acted like a clearinghouse to make sure that they was able to provide Kawhi with additional funds outside of the salary cap for a $2 million payment. That's what it looks like from the outside looking in.
From some of the other endorsement contracts that athletes do, in terms of amount, I don't know. I actually don't know the amounts of most endorsement deals, but when you look at Forbes magazine and they talk about the highest paid athletes, many of those top athletes, as Kawhi was a top athlete, is a top athlete, you read those things and they say they make more off endorsements than they do their, very large salaries. So I don't know what to expect, but I think the average fan may not either, but we did things by the book, and I don't know what those deals should look like, nor do I know what this one looked like specifically.
So why do you think they gave him that much money?
Let me just repeat, I don't know how much money they gave him.
Well, in the court documents and in Pablo's podcast, they report it was $28 million.
Pablo's podcast, I don't know anything about the court documents on this. I haven't seen them, and I don't know. I'm not trying to be, I don't know. I really don't know. But the speculation.
Hold the fuck up. You don't know nothing anymore, but you showed up to Bristol, Connecticut overnight for this interview? Come on, man. That's hard to believe.
Is what it is. And why did they do that?
It's a lot of money. I mean, $28 million, $7 million a year is a lot of money for a guy that you didn't actually require to do anything.
Wait till Ramona finds out it was really $48 million.
I don't know why they did what they did, and I don't know how different it is. I really don't. And frankly, any speculation would be crazy. These are guys who committed fraud. How would I be able? Look, they conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me. I made an investment in these guys thinking it was on the up and up, and they conned me. At this stage, I have no ability to predict why they might have done anything they did, let alone the specific contract with Kawhi.
I mean, you're one of the richest men in America. You've obviously done very well in your career in business. Like, you didn't smell anything wrong with the company. You didn't see anything wrong. Like, you obviously reviewed the financials before you got involved with the business proposal.
I reviewed, my staff reviewed primarily fraudulent financials. Now, should I have sniffed it out? Maybe. I feel embarrassed and kind of silly that I didn't sniff it out, but I didn't. I made the investment. A lot of other smart investors didn't sniff it out either. It's also true I've made a bunch of bad business deals and investments in my life, and I've made some good ones. This was fraud and a bad investment, and I'm embarrassed by that.
Now, once again, Steve Ballmer very nonchalant. It was a bad investment. I was defrauded. I didn't know anything. But overall, when you look at this whole Intuit Dome and just this Clipper venture for Steve Ballmer, he's been very detailed since the start. Again, for those of you that are watching the visual version, if you look at the timeline, he was able to woo back DeAndre Jordan by providing something outside of the cap. And also he was able to land Kawhi Leonard coming off the championship from the Raptors, and also PG-13, where he was coming off a season where he was voted top 3 in MVP votes. And after securing those two players at the time, especially for a franchise that was not known for winning, he was able to secure the land for the new arena in 2019. And also in March of 2020, he was able to purchase the Forum from the Knicks owner, James Dolan, and the MSG company. So Steve Ballmer has been on a mission ever since he's acquired the Clippers. And a lot of the acquisitions he was able to make, there's franchises that have been winning in the NBA for years, and they were not able to make all these moves in such a short span.
When you signed Kawhi in 2019, the NBA had an investigation that his uncle, Dennis Robertson, asked for extra benefits, whether it be use of a plane, a house, guaranteed endorsement opportunities. And at the end of that investigation, you were cleared of wrongdoing, but they left open by saying if any new information comes to light, they would reopen that. So since 2019, has Dennis Robertson asked you for any other benefits that would be in violation of the league rules?
They know the rules. They, meaning Kawhi and his representatives, including his uncle. We know the rules, and if anything's not clear, we remind ourselves what the rules are, and we make absolutely clear we're going to abide by those rules, and they understand them as well, and it's important for them to abide by them, which they have.
So you were listed as one of the largest creditors in the bankruptcy case, and you said in your statement you're looking forward to cooperating with the feds, you're looking forward to cooperating with the NBA investigation. Why? What are you looking forward to there?
Ramona, there's no paperwork that's actually tying him into paying Kawhi. It's just paperwork saying that he was an investor. This was very carefully crafted. You could even see from the way they crafted Kawhi's sponsorship deal, absolving him of any type of responsibility of even earning the money.
Well, the Clippers are actually the creditor. It's not on the investment that I am a creditor. It's on what they owed us for the sponsorship deal. And I just lost my investment. That's what happened there. Why am I looking forward to? It's really important to me to communicate to the NBA ecosystem, but particularly our Clipper fans, that we've been on the up and up. Since the day I bought the team, and the circumstances were definitely tough, we've really emphasized doing things the right way. Doing things the right way, whether it's the way we treat our fans, our players, our staff, the rules, do things the right way. And I want our fans to really understand that they've aligned themselves, that they support an organization that does things the right way. I mean, that's fundamental. We welcome the league investigation. We have nothing to hide. And in fact, we're glad for that opportunity also to tell our story. Because we think it's important, and it's important for me, for our fans to really understand that we're going to do the right stuff.
Since you signed Kawhi, and really even back to his days in San Antonio, there have been stories like this. There have been a couple of lawsuits filed. There was a lawsuit filed from a man named Johnny Wilkes, who said that he received payments for his influence there. Randy Shelton, a former trainer.
Dismissed.
Okay.
Dismissed by the court.
One of them is still ongoing, the one with Randy Shelton. I don't know why Ballmer said both of them are dismissed. Maybe he's not in the know.
The league has investigated you guys for some of these allegations. There's been issues with load management with Kawhi Leonard. There's been other issues with him. There's just a lot of smoke, right? And you say it's important to fans and for you to feel like you do it on the up and up. But you can understand why the average fan would go, okay, always with this guy. Like, why is there always these kind of stories with this guy?
I don't know. I think because he is, relatively doesn't speak much. I think there's a lot of mystery around Kawhi. And that may be why, fans kind of tell themselves, create a narrative, if you will. I've had a great relationship with Kawhi. I've gotten to know him a little bit. We sit down a couple times a year and just kind of talk about how the team's doing. The allegations, have not been true. But what's most important to me is we've done the right thing in all those interactions. And Kawhi's business is Kawhi's business, but we've always done the right thing.
Have you spoken to Kawhi about any of these allegations since the podcast came out on Wednesday?
I have not, no.
Would you be interested to see what he has to say?
It's really his business with Aspiration. So, I wouldn't ask about it, no.
If this story had come out about another team, another owner, how would you feel about it?
I'd want the league to investigate, take it seriously. Like I said earlier, the salary cap circumvention rules are important to the league, and I'd want the league to investigate.
Steve Ballmer already knows there's no paperwork legally tying him to giving Kawhi Leonard the money. And that's what it's all about, what you could prove on paper. As Paul George alluded to earlier in this segment, if it's not written on paper, you can't trust it.
And just so we're clear, you never directed anyone from Aspiration to do an endorsement deal with Kawhi Leonard?
No, I didn't. And more importantly, we, the Clippers, did not. We didn't give them direction. We made an introduction as is appropriate under the rules. A lot of sponsors do like to, they call it activate by doing something also with players. We made the introduction, and that was that.
Do you think, given this situation and other teams and the commonplace of stars doing a deal with a team sponsor, do you think the league should maybe look at that practice and maybe adjust that because of the appearance of impropriety or because of situations like this?
That would really be up to league office to think about. I mean, as the rules stand today, it would almost be disrespectful to tell a sponsor, no, I won't introduce you to that player. And it would be disrespectful to go to the player and say, yeah, somebody was interested in meeting you, but I won't tell you. The rule says we're allowed to do that. I think it's the respectful thing, actually, for us to do. And I think the system has worked well, but ultimately that's the NBA's call.
How do you the Board of Governors meeting is in a few days. How do you think your fellow owners are going to approach this?
I don't know. I hope they'll have faith and confidence in me, the folks who've gotten to know me, but I can't predict. Thanks, Ramona. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we've done and express, I guess, some of the anger I'm feeling about what's going on. And I also feel some sadness for our employees. I'm mad, but I'm also sad that they're going through this as well as our staff and our fans.
So there you have it from Steve Ballmer, a very unusual tone when it comes to how he didn't know for such a detailed guy. He's been very hands-on throughout this whole Clippers endeavor, but yet displayed a kind of a nonchalant attitude when asked about the details. And surprisingly, after the Pablo Torre investigation, Mark Cuban had inserted himself into this whole situation. And I'm not surprised, because ever since he sold this team and Luka surprisingly got traded, he has been itching and clawing back into the spotlight. But interesting enough, he sat down with Pablo Torre and they spoke about quite a few things. Aspiration actually contacted Mark Cuban prior, and they also touched base on how these sponsorship deals really work. And keep in mind, with Mark Cuban inserting himself into this situation, the sale of the Dallas Mavericks were tied to quite a few things. His dealings with Dirk Nowitzki after the 2011 championship run, with the Lakers and the Rockets offering Dirk a $92 million deal, but him rejecting it to stay with the Mavs. Things like that start to come into question when you see incidents like this happen with the Clippers. In the NBA today, money's piling up so high that a lot of things are not coincidences anymore. Luka getting traded to the Lakers just for one first-round pick and Anthony Davis. Not only it doesn't add up, you look at the domino effect. You look at Jeannie Buss and the Lakers sale, it gets finalized just a few months afterwards. Again, with so much money on the line, a lot of these things are not coincidences. And also with the backlash the Mavericks faced with giving up Luka, they were able to secure Cooper Flagg in the first overall pick with 1% odds. So too many coincidences all at once. And it's beginning to raise a lot of red flags.